My pleasure then to introduce to you the last session of the day, which is on developments in Austria. I'm very happy that we have so many participants here in the room and a whole more online. I don't have the number now, but there was 400 registrations, so I hope there's at least 100 listening. And so for the last session of today, after this very excellent speeches that we've already had, and everybody had a lot to say, we would also like to showcase to you 4 Austrian developments. So we're going to hear about a research project, but also about installations that are actually producing. And as the first one, I would like to take the online speaker, Andreas Werner. He is with the Brauunion Österreich, and he's the mastermind of the Green Brewery in Göss. And do we have Andreas Werner online?
Hello?
Yes. So yes, then,
and see me.
The floor is yours.
All. Yes, I see you, and good afternoon to all. I want to give you a short overview about our activities regarding to become a green brewery. Green brewery means for us to work or to produce with a zero footprint in terms of thermal energy. We are a brewery in Austria, in Styria, producing around 1.5 million hectoliters. And we started our journey towards green more than 10 years ago with several steps which were one by one and which were not planned from the first moment as a journey. They were more or less planned as actions. In 1979, we installed a wastewater treatment plant which was producing methane, and this methane we are using since 2002 also in the brewery, and this is covering around 10% of our total thermal energy demand. We did some trials with the burning of spent grains. Spent grains are a residual of brewing, of beer brewing, which is normally used as cattle food. And this cattle food market is a decreasing one because cattle in Austria becomes less. And the farmers, on the other hand, knew that the only way to get rid of these spent grains is over this cattle food market. We tried to get to go out of this dependency to the farmers, and the spent grain burning was successful in terms of feasibility, but was not successful in terms of costs. It was too expensive to dewater the spent grains enough to keep them burning from their own. In 2007, we installed a district heating. We have in our neighborhood a sawmill from Mayr-Melnhof who has had surplus energy and who offered us this energy for a very attractive price. And we were capable to invest in a second thermal net. Traditional breweries are working with gas in Austria and producing with gas steam. But on the other hand, we had now hot water with over 90 degrees. We've got from Mayr-Melnhof, and we had to install a second heat net with plate heat exchangers. And this was very successful in terms of replacing heat and was around 50% of our total demand. In 2012, a thermal solar panel field was installed. It was subsidized by the European Union, even in terms of capex, and this is just covering 3%. But it was also a feasibility study about the use of solar thermal heat in the production process, and it was successful too. And the last step was a biogas fermentation plant. We have built together with BDI in Graz, and here we are fermenting around 60% of our total spent grains, but the rest is still going to the agriculture, to farmers. And this biogas fermentation plant worked from the first moment to our fully satisfaction. And in total, we are now 100% renewable in terms of thermal energy and are producing additional electricity for the public grid. In the Heineken Group, we were the first brewery which was green, and it was mentioned as one of the 15 milestones in the 150 years Heineken history. In the present, we are working on a biogas purification. This purification became possible from the Erneuerbaren Energiegesetz, or renewable energy law, which took over some costs from the private industry to the public. And we are producing around 12 gigawatt hours biogas. Partly we make electricity, especially on weekends where the brewery is not producing. Partly we go directly in the brewery with the unpurified biogas, or we will, with the beginning of next year, purify this biogas with our own plant, and will feed this purified gas in the public net and can use it here for our trucks or our forklifts or other things, or we can write it for other production sites as a green energy. This is for the actual situation, and for the future, we are also working on the residue of this biogas plant. When you are producing biogas, you have a residue in around the same volume than the spent grain were. It's a watery digestate, but it is containing high proportions of valuable nutrients like phosphate, potassium, but also ammonia. And what is the great thing on our digestate is absolutely pure. It is organic certified. It is now spread over green fields, over agricultural fields, and we want to upgrade it, maybe to flower soil, or a second idea is to build up humus, and so to fix CO2 from the atmosphere again in the soil. This is a running project. We are optimistic that this project will be also feasible in technical scale, and finally it should be deliver a result on the next slide to get a new product with a higher value. And this means the upgrading. We are saving transportation costs because now we are transporting over 80% water, and we will save water because we will put this purified water back in the biogas plant, and this building up of humus soil and fixing so CO2, we will recapture it, we will get CO2 recapturing units, and so in this sense CO2 certificates. And at the end we will create a closed cycle economy, meaning we give back to the soil what we have taken out by the barley for the beer production. We will have an improved carbon footprint, and at least we will turn costs into savings. This is in all shortage what I want to tell you, and I'm waiting for your questions.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. So do we have a question here in the room? Not yet online, because there might be also a bit of a time delay there. Question in the room? No, yeah, one over here, please.
I didn't understand the organic material that farmers are wasting usually. Can you say it in German?
What the farmers are?
You said they are usually wasted and you are using it for energy making.
We have sold the spent grains to the farmers in former times, and now we give to the farmers this liquid digestate as a fertilizer.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the question back there.
Peter Seidinger, I'm always impressed by your beer and now for your story as well. I've heard previous times that you're also thinking of CNG trucks to deliver your beer by CO2-free then to the end customer. Is this still an option? Do you think on that? So to close also the logistics from your biomethane story.
Yes, what we have a strategic plan to operate trucks with biomethane produced in our brewery and fed in the public net. This plan is first for towns, and we are planning to make this concept reality also in other breweries. So we will also increase the biomethane quantity and so increase the kilometers we run trucks with CO2 neutrality.
Thank you. Thank you. Luke, you have another question? Yeah. Andrea?
Keep you moving. Hi, Luc Pelkmans from IEA Bioenergy. You're part of the bigger Heineken group. Is this concept also being applied within the group or tested in other facilities, or how do you see this deployed in the group?
Not until today. There are several projects where it is evaluated. There is one project they will start this year, but during the last months, due to the energy crisis, there was an enormous increase of interest, and I think after having so much visitors, so much managers from Heineken in our brewery interested in this technology, we are expecting that they will install this technology also in other breweries.
Great, thank you. I think we have a last question over there.
Yes, Joseph Schubert from Aguana. How do you plan to dewater your digestate? And are you able to do it without chemical flocculation aids?
Yes, we are running now trials. This digestate is easily to dewater with a common snail press. And we do not need any additional additives or chemicals.
Thank you. So then let's thank Mr. Werner for this presentation.
Thank you.
And as a next speaker, I would like to introduce to you my colleague Bernhard Drosk, working with me at BEST. He is area manager for bioconversion and biogas technologies. And the project he will talk about is about bioelectric syngas technology for the production of biomass-derived fuels and platform chemicals. Bernhard.
Thank you, Dina. It's a pleasure to be here. I will give you a short overview on the project and research we're doing. Mainly we want to valorize syngas, and I'm going to show you some details on this. The work is mainly together with Boku University, and want to highlight especially Professor Werner Fuchs, who is heavily involved in this project. How does the approach look like? The process we talk about is that we want to use some primary feedstock, such as lignocellulose or wastes, which then enter into a syngas production, so it's a gasifier, and we then go into a fermentation process, which is also supported with electricity, and we can produce building blocks, solvents, and also electrofuels. Thanks, Serge. Thanks, Jan. So the idea is to go to different products, and to show this into detail, just to explain the project name is BestTech. It's financed by IEA Bioenergy and the FFG, and it's to Austrian partner and also to Polish partner, one research institute and one innovative company. I just go very roughly through this. I think this has been mentioned already today, so this slide I don't have to go into detail, but we put in a fuel. We have here a gasifier, and we can produce this syngas, which is contained of hydrogen, CO2, carbon monoxide, and other components. I'm a biotechnologist, so I don't want to go into much detail here, but just to be clear. The second step we work with is a gas fermentation, which means that instead of using sugar as a carbon source, we can use gases. And here we enter with the syngas. We have here a trickle bed reactor where we have carrier materials, and the microbes grow on this carrier materials or also in this media. And there is this contact between a liquid and the gas, and the microbes can convert this gas, for example, into methane. But we are working on an alternative route to acetic acid, for example. The advantage of this trickle bed reactor is that we have a good balance between maximum gas transfer and energy input. We can have a high surface area, and it's also a rather sturdy and reliable process. What is interesting in this approach is that we don't need a high demand of the gas cleaning. So normally if you have a syngas and you go to Fischer-Tropsch or others, you need to really reduce the amounts of impurities in there, and we can work with less clean gas. The third step we work on is the electrofermentation. So there we have, don't want to go too much into detail here, but we have microbes which are on the different electrodes, and they can take up the electricity and then can use this electricity to convert organic materials into a very much steered direction. So if we're lacking some reduction equivalents, and these microbes can use this electricity, and this is the aim what we want to achieve in the project. So we end up with this three-step process. First we have this gasification, where we produce the syngas. Then we have the syngas fermentation, for example, in direction of acetate, and then we can produce via electrofermentation biobutanol. And this is the process we're looking at in the project. So just to have a look on the first step, in our company we have a gasifier which has 1 megawatt of fuel input, and we have a large experience in this part of the technology. So we don't go too much into detail here, but we can have a reference on how the gases are composed, and we can also go directly to this gasifier to use the gas produced there for our reactors. For the second step, which is the gas fermentation, the syngas fermentation, here I will just show you how our reactor looks like. So we have a gas fermenter, a trickle bed reactor, about 6 liters. We have a media tank where we can recirculate, and we can trickle this among these carrier materials. And we have a gas loop where we can steadily transport the gas into the reactor and have this exchange with the microbes. I don't want to go too much into detail, but this is the characteristics of this reactor. Up to now, we have been in this project mainly working with hydrogen CO2 containing gases, so for security reasons in the lab, but we want to go now also to syngas directly. From the reactor, which you can see here, standing in the lab, we have also some gas sensors, we have some condensers. We managed to produce You can see here some trials from the past, up to 6 or 8 grams per liter of acetate from the gas we put in. Of course, there can still be some improvements, but as this is a 3-step process, we want to demonstrate every of these steps. What is also interesting is when we go into detail of this reactor is we can have a look on the microbes which are involved, and here we can see graphs. So these different names are all sorts of different groups, but we can see for the colors, for example, there's a change. This was the sample we took at the beginning when we fed the reactor with sludge, and then after operation we could see that there is a change, and you can see, for example, from the different groups that they were going into this direction where we can then go to these metabolic pathways which we need for producing this acetate. For the last step, which is the active fermentation, I will show you also some results. One part is also to do research on electrode material, because we have to have material where the bacteria can grow on. You also don't want to put electricity into the water to produce hydrogen to make electrolysis. So you want to have some material where you can have the microbes and they grow and they use the electricity. And here's just some photo of the lab where we tested some materials. Here's some first results of this electrode material. So we can see here about 100% is the reference. And then we can see that if we lose some stainless wire mesh, or for example, we are well in the region, and then if we use some carbon-based material, it depends on which material we use. So there is still some optimization going on, and it's a new field to directly introduce electricity into the fermenter. So this is rather novel technology. And also some results. So what is happening in this reactor? So we have our microbe, which is a Clostridium acetobotulicum. We applied more or less a voltage of 2 volts. And we can see here, for example, the pink line is the carbon source. In this case, we worked with glucose, and we could see that the butanol, which is the green line, could be increased. So we had several experiments, and we could see that definitely by applying this electricity in the small reactors, we can come up with the product which we want to, which in this case is butanol. So just to wrap up the presentation, I think you got the idea. It's rather complex. So we have 3 different steps which we have to look at in some way. The driving force on one hand is that we want to have some technology where we can use syngas which is not purified, which is not clean. So I'm not expert in gasification, but I've heard that 1/3 or even more of the cost can be the cleaning, the gas cleaning of this technology. So of course, if we can use dirty gas, it can be cheaper in some way. The status of technologies is different from the technology readiness level. So gasification is in a pre-commercial step. The gas fermentation is already rather close to commercialization, or in some cases already commercialized, and electrofermentation is still lab scale. So of course, this is something we have to keep in mind, that we're talking about future processes which are not currently applied. What we still want to do, and where the way is now going, is that we want to work with the real syngas in the gasifier. This is the direction we want to go in future. So thanks a lot. This was my presentation.
Bernhard, thank you. Very interesting. So we have time for a few questions, and I see 2 hands raised over there. So we're going to get you microphones.
Yeah, thank you very much for interesting presentation. A couple of questions. First, you mentioned that you are not that expert about the gasification part, but I expect that you use dual fluidized bed, which can produce around 2000 ppm of naphthalene and benzene. And also, the syngas will include HCN, H2S, HCl if you gasify waste, COS, and especially HCl can cause problem, I believe, in gas fermentation step. This is not my expertise, just this is my guess. Can you a little bit elaborate on such a, let's say, nasty composition in the syngas in the real, let's say, gasification medium, and also give some hints about the techno-economical features of this process route. Thank you very much.
Okay. For the first question, maybe let's start from the end. So I know that some sulfur components, they're causing problems in catalysts for using. So normally the microbes don't have really a lot of issues with, so if you go in a biogas process, you have 1000 ppm H2S or more, and it's not really harming the process. So we expect that from this side, there is not so much issue. Then, of course, when we come from the other end, we have the tars. So normally you have maybe a small cleaning step where you remove these components. But as I said, it's not my expertise. But we were discussing the same amount about the HCN and these components. So with the fine cleaning, I think maybe we can save this. The rough cleaning, there will be normally done. But the interesting part will be coming from, let's say, the research phase to the practical phase, how much we can save. And these are the questions which we want to see and have a look at. The second one, techno-economics. Well, for electrofermentation, I'm very sorry this is so far away in some ways. So I'm a biotechnologist, so to have electricity in the fermenter, this is still a very new field. This is not so much.
So thank you for this impressive presentation. One question, you showed an overall picture of the 3 steps and with percentages. I think these percentages have been by volume. For what I'm interested, what is the overall economy? From 100% energy from the bio waste, you get out how much biofuels or biomethane, just as an indication over the 3 steps. Thank you very much.
So you mean from the start of the process, we have this gasification process where I don't have it by heart, but we thought about 70% or something in this direction. And then we have this the gas fermentation. So in the gas fermentation, we normally would not need so much energy because it's not a very energy-intensive process. And for the electrofermentation, this is still very far to go. So it was roughly, as I said, this is very different disciplines. So this is actually a graph I took out from the research proposal. That was estimation of what we would think that it would look like. Yeah. But there's still a lot of numbers which we don't know. And
overall, you get 35% of energy in biofuels.
It's about more or less the carbon. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I have another question regarding the electrofermentation. So you showed experiments with glucose as the carbon source, but you should have some acetate and everything. So did you try with only acetate or?
We're still in the progress of the process. So the first step is that you always go for every step by its own and try to optimize it. So that's why we work with glucose, because it's the easiest. Everybody uses glucose in fermentation. And then the next step in the process will then be to go for acetate and see the yields there. But we also had a lot of issues just to defining the cathode material or this electrode material, because you put electricity in, you get hydrogen out because electrolysis. So we have to find some good material. It's really basic research in this step.
Clearly, yeah. But do you want to try it with algae as well? Because they can use acetate to produce lipids, for example.
Well, in this case, the idea is to use microbes which can take up the electricity and convert it. So I'm not sure if algae can do the same.
I don't know neither.
But from these organisms, we know that they're capable.
Thank you very much. I think due to time reasons, we should wrap up your presentation here. Thank you. And I'm handing over to my colleague Hannes Bauer from the Ministry.
Hello, welcome again. Let's start the last session about ethanol production. First, I would like to welcome Josef Schubert. He is a plant manager of Agrana Stärke in Austria. and responsible for technology, operations, and representation of the plant. Has got a lot of employees, and the plant is a biorefinery producing wheat starch, wheat protein, bioethanol, biogenic CO2, and protein-rich animal feed. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to present my plant here. You can see an aerial view of the site. I will step immediately inside the... Thank you, this one here. So, the content, I will show the process scheme, I will talk about the products more in detail, I will talk about energy and efficiency, about automatization, it's a young plant, and I will give an outlook about the future ideas we have in order to have even more efficiency or even more value gaining. Here you can see the installed processes. We have a very high process integration. On the bottom you can see the process line installed 2008 for the bioethanol production. The output is bioethanol and animal feed. And then we added 2013 and 2019 two other lines producing wheat starch on the top. And what about the integration? I want to emphasize that we only process feed corn and feed wheat, and feed wheat on the top. And feed wheat is characterized in our region, Central Eastern Europe, by a lot of small kernels, and small kernels have a lot of surface and not a lot of volume. And so these ones are not really good for the milling process, so we sieve them out, we crush them, and we put them directly into the bioethanol process. There is another integration, the second flour. Second flour is an intermediate between the flour body and the shell of the wheat. And the most important one, and I jump shortly forward, is this B and C starch. You see it here with the evaporator tower. Wheat has the particularity compared to corn, rice, and the other crops that it has a very broad starch particle size distribution from approximately 1 micrometer to 40 micrometer. And what we like to process or gain is the big kernels because they are good for paper industry, they are good for further processing, and the small ones, they are good for fermentation. And that's why we go through an evaporation step, because there is a lot of water also, it's a water intensive process, and then we put them directly into the fermentation. At the moment, our fermenters are fed with 50% residuals from the wheat starch processing. And in the wheat starch processing, we separate the flour into the gluten. It has more than 82% of protein, and the starch. And we get a lot of feed varieties. Here you can see an integration downwards. Either we are using, for example, the bran, the shell of the wheat, for drying the syrup on it. It's an excellent carrier material for having efficient drying. Why do we have a high total yield? Is because we only put in condensate. We try to only put condensate to our wastewater treatment plant. This is not a lot of COD loss. And of course, the multiple usage or cascade usage, we think this is the future for these biorefineries. And this cascade uses implies that you get out a whole bunch of products. And of course, we want to have the ones which have the highest value. For example, the gluten. Here we substitute meat, or we put it directly into bakery. So it has a food application, but also an application in the top areas of our nutrition chain, food chain, for our pets, if you feed your dog or your cat, or for your aquafeed, or if you buy aquafeed, if you buy salmon in the retail shops. It's usually aquafeed Somo. We also process or produce 250,000 tons of starch, which is mainly used in the paper industry. Also corrugated board, if you buy something from Amazon, it contains a significant amount of starch, for example. Air Liquide is liquefying 80,000 tons of our COD. There is still some way to go. I will come to this one later on. So there is still some COD going into the atmosphere. We are producing approximately 300,000 tons of feed material, which has an enriched protein content. And with this feed material, we substitute the soya imports from overseas, coming from South America and North America, for example. So that means this is regional production and really regional value. And of course, we produce 260,000 cubics a year of ethanol, which is blended into the gasoline. What is important for me to emphasize and to underline is that you can call this factory also a protein factory, a plant protein factory, and that nearly 100% of the protein input equals the protein output. That means everything, all these protein products, we put them back into the food chain, and of course as high as possible. And that's what I want to bring here, this message. Of course, putting it higher in the food chain brings higher value for us and is also better for the overall efficiency. If you look at 1 acreage of field, you can feed much more people if you go directly with the plant protein into the food chain. In the future, it will be more important as we will have 10 billion of people around about 2050. Energy, you only need to look into the newspapers. Energy is important at the moment, but was always important. And I want to underline here that most of our caloric energy is coming from the nearby waste incineration plant. They are making electricity with the steam and up to a certain pressure, and then they deliver us the steam with 13 bar gauge. We are using the caloric energy and putting them back and sending them back the condensate. So under the line we have a very high total efficiency, also during the summer when there is not a lot of municipal heating. But also inside the factory, we are doing our homework. At the moment, we are recovering 12 megawatt of energy from our feed stuff dryers. You can see one chimney here making vapor. We condense out the vapor with approximately 90 degrees C, sending the hot water to our starch and gluten dryers. They need approximately 1 million of cubic or 800,000 cubic of air an hour. And this air is heated from 10 degrees average outside temperature to 70 degrees for free with this exhaust heat. Digitalization, at the moment there are 7 guys or 7 operators running the factory 24/7 from outside from the raw material silos inside the finished product silos. It was possible to do this concept because it's a really young factory and we thought about the automatization at the beginning. And with every enlargement, we are even trying to make the next big step. I already mentioned at the beginning, we are thinking about future projects. I think in this during this conference, you already heard a lot about such ideas. Short summing up, we have still approximately 100,000 tons of CO2, highly concentrated, 98%, which can be gained more or less easily and can be transformed. And we are trying to transform it, but at the moment this is in the drawer due to the lack of electricity for producing hydrogen. But maybe in the soon future we will put it out of the drawer. Maybe something which will get interesting before is to use more the agricultural residuals. Agrana is a company which is coming from the agriculture side, and we have a very tight linkage to the farmers, and we are trying to get corn straw. I already heard rice straw and so on. What the Chinese are doing, the English are doing. We are also thinking about this one. And what always we have to think about when we use these residuals, we don't have to decrease the humus on the fields. So we want to put back the fertilizer on the field. And of course, we want to use anaerobic digestion, which is not losing any nitrogen. So it's all about nitrogen balance either. It's all about carbon efficiency. And at the end of the day, we will come into the market probably when the product has a certain price and when the whole situation is economic. I'm at the end of my presentation. Feel free to ask questions.
Thank you very much. So, do you have some questions from the audience? Yeah. Yes, please, over there.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Kees Kwant. So my question is, it's a very good concept. So cascading the use of biomass. So, but let's say each year the harvest might be different. So you're not having a stable situation. So how do you optimize under, well, the different years with different harvests and maybe different kinds of grains that you get from your fields?
Yeah, good question. For example, these small kernels I mentioned, they vary a lot from one season to another. It depends the rain and so on, the drought. And we can adapt on this one. We can use different sieves and so on. I won't tell everything, but we try, of course, to leverage out all these differences to have a stable process down afterwards. And sometimes corn is better, sometimes wheat is better. That's also something what I see. And of course, a wheat starch plant can only process wheat because of the gluten agglomeration. But on the bioethanol side, as I've said, 50% of feedstock is still coming from whole grains, corn mostly, or wheat. So here we can play on using a little bit more wheat, using a little bit more corn or triticale and so on, to leverage out a little bit all these fluctuations. And we are sitting on the banks of the Danube River, so we can get barge transport, especially from the east, because in the eastern region there is still a big surplus on feed, wheat, corn, and grains.
And other questions over there?
Thank you very much. It's also impressive, and the high integration of everything is really first class. Only one question: how do you answer questions that are stating you're producing ethanol from feed and from wheat and from corn? Isn't that this discussion either to have this for eating and feeding the people, or making fuels out of it? Maybe you outlined in your last slide that you want to change this or get to another feedstock. What do you answer to such remarks?
Yeah, this plate tank discussion, we know it very good. What we answer to them is that you have to look at the details, that we put all the nitrogen back into the food chain, and it's exactly the nitrogen which is missing in Europe. If you look at the balance, we are importing millions of tons of soy every year in Europe, and we are producing this concentrated nitrogen which should directly go into the food chain, and that's the most efficient, because if you look at 1 hectare, you can produce 5 to 6 tons of wheat, and there you can have 8% of gluten. And so you can feed the most of the people when putting directly the plant protein into the food chain, because every animal step has an efficiency of 10 to 60% nitrogen efficiency, and the rest is lost. So for us, for the future, it's all about putting a lot of these proteins directly into the food chain, because then we have a whole total efficiency. And we want to talk with the people in detail, because only looking at plate and tank, this is not really the right discussion, because they don't know that there is a lot of feed wheat which is not suitable for food and so on. We have to go into the details and we have to look. But we don't want to take any nitrogen away from the plate. And we are not doing that. We are filling the hole which is in Europe.
So plate first. There's another question on this side.
Hi, impressive. So I just wanted to ask, you said you presented 2 future projects, and one is the green jet fuel from concentrated CO2. And you have mentioned that the current RED is limiting that project. So what would you change? The current legislation you mentioned is limiting that project. What would you change?
The most important for this project to change is that we have green hydrogen available for an affordable price. Of course, then is the RED II regulation, but I don't want to dig into this one. In Austria at the moment, it's more about having this green hydrogen available, because SAF at the moment has a price of $3 to $4 a liter. And to be honest, if you use hydrogen, which costs 12 euros a kilo, I can show you the calculation. You don't need to calculate. So we need to build renewable energy. And of course, legislation is simultaneously, and all what the RED II requires has also to fit.
Well, I would be happier more if you have talked more about RED and what could be improved there to make your project feasible. But we can talk about that over coffee.
Okay, yeah, the simultaneously, for example, the additional requirements, this is not so easy. We talked with electricity companies, but we can talk afterwards in detail.
Okay, you can talk also with a glass of beer or wine afterwards. We will get some. So I think that's it. Let's thank very much, Mr. Schubert. Thank you very much. Let's come to our next presentation, please, Dr. Wollbold. So we go a little west, direction Salzburg, in Hallein. Dr. Petra Wollbold from Austrocell Hallein will talk about the 2nd generation bioethanol by utilization of wood sugars, the Austrocell Biorefinery. She's head of research and development at Austrocell in Hallein since 2020. She's got over 15 years experience in wood and cellulose chemistry, lignocellulosic biorefineries, pulp and viscose research. So the floor is yours. You are welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to present the Austrocell Biorefinery to you. We are a pulp mill, and we call ourselves biorefinery because we try to make use of most of our raw material wood and not only generate pulp out of it, we also want to use side streams to generate more products. The location of the pulp mill is near Salzburg in Hallein. And what you can see here on this map is that we have short distances and short transportation routes for our raw material wood. We get 67% of our wood from Austria, the green part that you can see on the map, and the last third comes from southern Germany, from Bavaria, and Hallein is very close to the border to Germany. On this picture, you can see the pulp mill, you see the chimney of our recovery boiler, and the mill is located at Salzach River. You see the wood yard, and we also have railways for transportation nearby. Austrozell has a very long history. It starts 130 years ago. The company was founded as a pulp mill, integrated pulp mill producing coated paper. There was a very long era where the company was owned by Borregaard, the Norwegian era, and at this time there was always the first time that bioethanol was produced from the wood sugars. This was seized due to economical reasons, and then came a very turbulent time with many changes in ownership. And in 2006, there was an investment in a biomass combined heat plant, and in 2009, the paper production was seized. And very big step to the biorefinery was then in 2013 when the decision was made to change the production from paper pulp to dissolving pulp. In 2014, the biogas plant was installed, and the latest achievement we did for becoming a biorefinery was in 2021 when our bioethanol plant was started. Here on this slide, you see some key facts. We have 290 employees. We produce our main product, dissolving pulp, about 140 kiloton per year. We also produce 45 kiloton lignosulfonate. Then we have also a byproduct that is green electricity and district heating from our combined heat and power plants. Our electricity can bring electricity to 25,000 households and district heating for 13,000 households in Salzburg. And another byproduct that we produce is 20 to 25 million liters bioethanol per year. Our main product, dissolving pulp, is produced from spruce wood. The spruce wood goes into the sawmills and is used for construction, for example. And the raw material that we use are the residual wood chips. These wood chips are converted to dissolving pulp, and we deliver this dissolving pulp to our customers who convert it to regenerate fibers, and these fibers go into textile production. And the main difference between dissolving pulp and paper pulp is the purity of the pulp. Dissolving pulp contains mainly cellulose, and as you can see when you look at the composition here of spruce wood, there's 44% cellulose and 28% hemicelluloses and 28% lignin. And when we dissolve the hemicelluloses and the lignin out of the wood, there is plenty of room to use these material from the wood. The wood chips are put into our digesters, and hemicelluloses and lignin are dissolved, and we gain the brown liquor containing lignin and sugars. The hemicelluloses are hydrolyzed to the sugars during this acidic sulfite process. And after cooking, the liquors are separated, and it goes into the bleaching line, and there we have filtrates and rejects. The filtrates contain carbohydrate, degradation products, and lignin. And this is the first byproduct of our biorefinery. It's energy. These bleaching filtrates, they go into our biogas production. And the biogas that is produced there goes into our biogas motor, so we can produce electricity out of it. And additionally, we have the biomass combined heat and power plant, where we feed energy wood or woody biomass and 30% of internal residues like rejects or wastewater sludge. And the products are heat that is going into our own process, and also district heat and electricity that is fed to the public grid. The other byproduct of our biorefinery is the bioethanol. Before we installed the bioethanol plant, the brown liquor from pipe production went into our evaporation plant and was concentrated, and the concentrated black liquor went into the recovery boiler and was burned for energy and also for the recovery of chemicals. So the hemicelluloses went into the recovery boiler and were burned. When we installed now the bioethanol plant, these brown liquors are concentrated and are split from the evaporation plant and go into the fermenters. There we have an adapted yeast that is producing bioethanol. The ethanol is distilled to a purity of 99.9%. The water is also removed, and then we can sell the ethanol. And the residual liquor after distillation goes back into the evaporation plant. This liquor contains mainly lignin and is still burned in the recovery burner to get the chemicals back and energy out of it. Here you can see the bioethanol production site. This is the head of the distillation column. Here we have the fermenters in this building, and here's this railway connection where we can load the ethanol onto the train. So this is the last slide of the presentation. We fitted, it was a retrofit to put the ethanol plant into an existing pipe production. And this was an investment of 42 million euros. We produce at the moment 20 to 25 million liters, but we have capacity for 35 million liters of alcohol per year. Here you can see the composition of the spent liquor containing mostly mannose, a little bit of glucose, and there's also some C5 sugars left that are not converted or go into the recovery boiler. Yeah, and the ethanol that is produced it goes to the OMV and is used for transportation fuel. So I'm at the end of the presentation. Do you have any questions?
So, please, thank you very much for the presentation. Please raise your hands if you have any remarks or questions, or both. No? Last chance? Okay. So, thank you very much for your presentation again. I think I would like to hand over to Luc.
Okay, thank you, Hannes. So thanks everybody for staying so late. It's been a real long day, longer than we expected or hoped. But congratulations for staying here, and I think you have a good motivation with the reception, which is coming a little bit later. So that's really great. So I would like to thank everybody who was involved in the organization of the workshop, and particularly also the people who are involved today, all the moderators that we have. There's quite a lot of them also, with the duo moderators, all the speakers, all the panelists who have accepted to present either here, either online. And so also thanks to all the participants here in Vienna and also online. There was quite a few online also. In the program, it was said I was going to make a summary of the workshop. Keep that very short. So there was a few highlights I want to mention. Just on biomethane in the morning, you have biogas, which is quite mature, but quite a lot is actually happening in the upgrading part. With CO2 extraction, with biological methanation. So that's quite interesting things. And on the other hand, you also have the gasification pathway, which is coming up and which is promising also to be quite developing, also with quite a high demand of biomethane that we had. And it's also quite easy to put it in the grid, so that all helps. And in the afternoon, we talked about advanced biofuels, thermochemical routes on one side and biochemical examples on the other side. Some of them already coming into the market, so we can expect things really, things are getting concrete and also may get more in deployment in the coming years. What you do see is that, well, there may be a focus now on road transport fuels, but in the longer term, most companies are really saying, well, can we tag into this jet fuel demand, the biojet fuel demand? So I think that's a very interesting evolution. And we also saw the Austrian developments here, very interesting. So we had projects on one side and really concrete developments, what's really happening in the industry. It's really great. And what you do see also from these examples, but also from advanced biofuels and other examples, is it's about biorefining. So it's about creating a variety of products. It's not just a biofuel facility, it's really a variety of products which is coming out and which is all together building the business case. And CO2 is also a very important part of it, capturing the CO2 and then doing something with it. I'll stick to that. So in terms of my summary, just to mention that all the presentations that you have seen, we will put them online also in the coming days. I will just have to check with all the speakers if the version that I have is the one that can be put online in PDF form. So I'll reach out to them. And personally, I'll also start working on a summary publication for this workshop, trying to capture everything a little bit with a short summary of all the presentations, and I'll work on that in the coming months. So before Christmas, I hope to get that ready. So thanks again. So I've invited you, everybody, to the reception. There's still some sweets, quite a lot of sweets, I think, which are left over from the coffee break. So you can start from that, and I was promised that there's going to be plenty more coming.
The more is stuck during a demonstration on the Ringstraße, but will hopefully be there soon.
Okay, so I'll keep your patience. So you had quite a lot of patience today, but you can already grab the things that we have there, and things will be coming.
Thank you very much, Luke. And not to bring you about your last words, but I have here a box of chocolates to thank all the speakers and moderators, and especially you, Luke, for putting together this program. So afterwards, if the speakers would come up again, I'd be happy to hand you a chocolate. Thank you, Luke.
Okay, thanks, Ina.